Hello everyone, welcome to the CloudLearn AWS Zero This is the day 27 video in which we are going to talk about virtual private cloud. We also call it as a VPC. VPC is AWS Managed Service, and this is the most important service in the AWS cloud. As of now, we have created EC2 instances, right? We have created load balancers, auto scaling, right? For all these things, VPC is a mandatory. But you might have a question. We never created a VPC yet, right? Because by default, AWS will provide a VPC in each and every region in your AWS account. That's why, as of now, we have used the default VPC every time we create the EC2 instances and all. Okay, the first thing, what exactly the VPC is? VPC is a virtual network in the cloud. We are creating our server services, right? And we need to connect all these things in a network. And that network service on that network is offered by the VPC service. By default, the AWS provides one VPC in every region, and that is known as default VPC or a default network. If you recollect, at the time of creating the EC2 instance, we have chosen only, we have seen only one option under network. That is what the default VPC. And default VPC, like whenever you have seen the VPC, which is network, right? That contains multiple subnets. Every default VPC contains multiple subnets. How many? Every VPC contains how many subnets by default in the default VPC. That depends on the number of availability zones in that particular region. If you take the example of Hyderabad, in the Hyderabad default region, you can get three subnets by default because it has three availability zones. The same way, in the Northern Virginia region, the default VPC contains six subnets, which means one subnet in every availability zone by default. So can we create more subnets? Yes, we can create more subnets according to our requirement. You can create up to 250 subnets in every network. And there is a limit for number of VPCs in every region. We can create maximum 5 VPC per region. And that limit is a soft limit, which means whenever you think you need more than 5 VPCs in a given region, you can send a limit increase request. You can create a support ticket with the AWS support, and they can increase that number from 5 to 10, 15, 20 according to your requirement. Every VPC contains a lot of components. So first, let me list out all the components, and then we will talk about each and every component in detail. First one is a network. Network itself is a VPC, and every network or VPC contains a subnet, right? And here we have two types of subnets. One is a public subnet, and the second one is a private subnet. Then we have internet gateway. Just I will list out all, sorry, I will list out all the components, and then we can talk about each and every component and their use case in the real time. Internet gateway, and then we have a route tables, and these route tables contains a route. Then we have something called a bastion host, then network address translation, which is also known as a NAT. We have a two types of things, NAT instance, which is obsolete, or I can say outdated. No one is using that because it doesn't have high availability and all. And we are using the NAT gateway. Then network ACL, which is also known as NACL, and a VPC peer. These are the important components we must learn to become a solutions architect. If you miss any component in these listed things, you can't understand how a VPC works or how the infrastructure, how the architecture in the AWS infrastructure. So these are the mandatory components you must learn, and you must have some hands-on experience also. So first one is a network, right? So what is a network? General network is an like a kind of uh, what we call that. If you connect two or more devices together, that is called as a network, right? In the VPC, in the AWS, network is an isolated logical section. What is the meaning of isolated? Simple thing. If you have a two networks in the AWS, those two networks cannot communicate with each other. That is what the isolation. So the network in the AWS or a VPC is an isolated logical section to connect all your devices like EC2 instances, load balancers, and all. And that is also known as a VPC. And whenever you're creating a VPC, but we have a default VPC, that's okay. But whenever you have a requirement to create a VPC, at the time of creating the VPC, that VPC span across all the availability zones in the region, which means, just I will give you a comparison. Whenever you're creating an EC2 instance in Hyderabad, in like a Hyderabad region, then you can create, I mean, you can place that EC2 instance in one of the availability zone, right? But here, the VPC is spanned across all the availability zones of the region. Means if you create the, I mean, simple logic. Let us say uh, you have an open plot, open land, right? In which you are going to construct a five-story building, 5 floors. Each floor belongs to one family, right? But that plot, that plot spans across, I mean, what we can say, all 5 floors belongs to the same land, right? The same way, networks belongs to the entire region. The network span across all the availability zones. If I create one VPC in Hyderabad region, my VPC is available in all the availability zones of the Hyderabad region. Then the next component is a subnet. What is the subnet? Subnet means sub network. Sub means a small portion, right? Subnet is a small portion of the network which exists in a single availability zone. The subnet is available at single availability zone. Means if you consider that entire five-story building as a network, each floor as a subnet. First floor, subnet 1. Second floor, subnet 2. Third floor, subnet 3. What is the use case? What is the use case is in each subnet, you can place different set of servers. Like in the subnet 1, I can place my websites, web servers. In the subnet 2, I can place my testing servers. In the subnet 3, I can place my database servers. Right? The same way, you can divide that entire network into smaller subnets, sub networks. By default, how many subnets we can create in each region? By default, we can create 200 subnets in each VPC, which can be adjustable as per your requirement. Like let us say I have a requirement to create a 350 subnets. So you can do that by sending a limit increase request, but no one will create those many subnets. 200 is more than enough. And we have different types of subnets. In each subnet, we have types of subnets. One is public subnet. The first one is a public subnet, and the second one is a private subnet. Based on the names, can you identify what is a public subnet and what is a private subnet? Public subnet means the subnet might be available publicly, which means that can be accessible from anywhere across the globe. Private subnet means that is only available for private uses. Simple thing, your own car and a public transportation. There is a public transportation like road transport corporation bus. Anybody can use the bus, right, by paying money or something. Whereas your private car, your own personal car, nobody can use it unless you have given the permission. The same way, the public subnet, whenever you create an EC2 instance in the public subnet, that EC2 instance will get The public IP address. What is the use of public IP? Public IP can be accessible from anywhere across the globe. So whenever you are planning to run a website, and that website must be accessible from anywhere across the globe, which means that web server must have a public IP. In such cases, you must create your EC2 instance in the public subnet. That's the real use case of the public subnet. Now, what is the use case of the private subnet, or what exactly the private subnet? Private subnet means the instances will be created without a public IP. There is no concept of public IP. It will have only the private IP, which cannot be accessible from outside. So, whatever the servers to be accessible within the same network, in such cases, we will use the private subnet. Example, the database servers. Example, the database servers. Let me give you a simple use case about why to use a private subnet. Let us take the example of, I think everybody uses Instagram and all, right? Everybody will have create some kind of Instagram accounts. Your username, passwords, your data, everything will be stored in the databases at the backend. But how we can access the data using the Instagram application? We don't directly connect to the database running some SQL queries or something to get the data, right? Means no one can access the databases directly. In such example, why should we maintain the database server in the public, in the internet? Not required, right? So what they do is they will create a database in the private subnet, and the front-end application interface, right? Application will be running in the public subnet. We will be connected to the public subnet, and the subnet one is a public subnet, and subnet two is the private subnet. Those two subnets are in the same network, so they can access with each other. That's how your application will communicate with the database, and it will fetch the data from the database. And that we can see from your mobile application. Simple use case. The public subnet can be used to create your instances or services to be exposed to the internet, means which can be accessible from anywhere across the globe. The private subnets, the instances which has to be accessed within the same network. In such cases, we will use the private subnet. And I will show you all these components with a picture, which we can easily understand. Okay, then internet gateway, which we call it as IGW. Internet gateway is AWS managed, highly available and a scalable service or a component which can be established the communication between your network and the internet. Okay, so let me make it simple. Just assume this is your network, or we call it as a VPC. So I can say my first VPC, the name of the VPC, which is having two subnets. I said subnet is a small portion, right? This is public and this is a private. How they will become public and how they will become private, that is based on the internet gateway. What is the use of the IGW or internet gateway? It is a component which can establish the communication with your VPC to the internet. Let us say in your public subnet, you have a server one. You logged into that server one and you typed google.com, right? How it goes, the request will go to the internet gateway and then it will go to the actual google.com website. That is the use of internet gateway. So I think you got the clarity about what is the use of the internet gateway. Internet gateway is a AWS managed service. You are not responsible to make that internet gateway up and running. That is managed by AWS, which is a highly available and highly scalable. What is the meaning of highly scalable? Suddenly, if 1,000 EC2 instances in your network is downloading something from the internet, which requires a huge data transfer speed and huge bandwidth. So your internet gateway automatically scales to support that much faster speeds. And one important point you must remember is you can attach only one internet gateway per VPC. You can't attach two internet gateways or three internet gateways or so to improve the speed. You can attach only one internet gateway. Okay, then the next component is route table. Based on this route table or the routes in the route table, your subnet becomes either a public or a private. Your subnet becomes a public or a private. Okay, what is this route table? This route table will, like, what is the meaning of a route first? R-O-U-T, a route, a path, right? Whenever you open a Google Maps, and if you type Bangalore to the destination, then it will show you a route. Means to reach the Bangalore from Hyderabad, this is the path you have to choose, right? So this route table is a kind of Google Maps application, and the route is the actual path to reach the destination. So we can say the route table is a component which is required for the communication. And the route table, as I said, it will shows the path to reach the destination, like how to travel to reach specific destination. That is available in this route table with the help of a route. And whenever we create a VPC, practically we will see a default route table will be created. A default route table will be created, and that is known as a main route table. And you can create as many route tables as you want. You can create as many route tables as you want. And the new route table, whenever we create a new route table that contains a default route, which establish the communication with all the subnets in your VPC. Okay, I will show you how a route looks like. How a route looks like. The route contains two components. One is a destination, and the second one is a target. Every route contains two paths. So here I will explain what it is. Okay, to understand this better, for every network, there should be a network range. We call it as a CIDR. CIDR, classless interdomain routing range. We can call it as an IP address range. So I will say my VPC range is 192.168.0.0/60. Means if I take a range like 1 to 100, right? So if I have 50 computers, the numbers will be assigned like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and so on, right? The same way, every device in the network must have a IP address, With the help of IP address only, the communication is possible. So here, this 192.168.0.0/16 is the range of my network, which means in my network, all the IP addresses must start with like this. Why here? It has a 16 network bits. Each octet contains 8 bits. These 16 are network bits. In my network, those 16 bits will never change. Then we need to assign a subnet ranges also, means 1 to 100. Let us say you're running a school and government gave you roll numbers from 1 to 100. What you will do? You will decide like 1 to 10, 11 to 20, 21 to 30, 31 to 40, and so on. This is for class 1. This is for class 2. This is for class 3, right? Means whoever joins in class 1, I will assign roll numbers from 1 to 10. For class 2 students, 11 to 20. For class 3, 21 to 30. But all these numbers belong to the same range, 1 to 100. But that 1 to 100 has been divided into smaller portions. The same way here, The public will become 192.168.1.0/24, and for private, I will say 192.168.2.0/24. So for each subnet, I will give a different sub range in my main network. But whenever I have some time, I will create one video about networking also, like how to understand the IP address and all. Okay. So what is the meaning of this route table? I said here I gave you, right? So here we will have a route table. Every subnet must have a route table. I will say these are the route tables. Every subnet must have a route table. So in this route table, let us say this is the route and this is a local, which means if this computer is trying to reach, this is a destination and this is a target. If the computer one is trying to reach an IP address which is in this particular network, then the path should be local, means no need to go outside of the network. The destination has to reach within the local. That's how it looks like. So by default, whenever you create a route table, it will have a default route which establishes the communication with all the subnets in the same VPC. So if you see here, this 192.168.0.0/16 is the VPC CIDR range. CIDR means classless inter-domain routing. That is a full form of CIDR. We can say IP address range. So by default, a new route table, whenever you create a new route table, that act as a private route table. So how we can say, let us say this is the name is public RT, means route table for the public subnet. Here, by default, a new route table act as a private route table, which means this subnet will not become a public. How we decide the subnet is a public or private, that depends on the route table. And this route table doesn't know how to reach internet because there is no information about google.com in the route table. From the computer one, if you try to access google.com, it will go to the route table and there is no information in the route table about the google.com. It only has the information about your VPC. Then it cannot reach the google.com. How it is possible? By before that, which is responsible to establish the communication with the internet gateway. So here you need to create an additional route through the internet gateway. What is this 0000 stands for? This indicates all. So let us say the google.com's IP address is 11.12.13.14, for example. So from the server one, whenever you type google.com, it identifies the destination is 11.12.13.14. What happens here? It will go to the route table and it will check for 11.12.13.14, like how to reach 11.12.13.14. First, it will go to this route. 11, 12, 13, 14 doesn't belong to 192. Then it will go to the second route. Yes, 11, 12, 13, 14 belong to 0000 because 0000 means all. Then here it has a target called internet gateway, means to reach the 11.12.13.14, you have to go to the internet gateway. And from here, internet gateway will take you to the google.com. Means if any route table contains an additional route through the internet gateway, then that route table becomes a public route table. Then the route table becomes a public route table. Okay. So I can say by creating an additional route through the internet gateway, that route table becomes a public route table. And one more important thing, you cannot create a subnet without a route table. So we can say every subnet must be associated with a route table. If you associate your subnet with a public route table, then that is called as a public subnet. And if you associate with a private route table, then that will becomes a private route, private subnet. So already I said by creating an additional route through the internet gateway, that route table becomes a public route table. Then how that looks like by default, you will get like this, right? Then you have to create like this. So I can say additional route. This is a default route. If any route table looks like this one, 0000 internet gateway, that means that's a public route table. This additional route makes your route table as a public route table, and all subnets associated with this particular route table becomes a public subnet. So these are the basic things required to learn about or to create our first VPC. But still we have network address translation, right? NAT instance, NAT gateway, Bastion host, that we will cover once we complete the hands-on exercise using these components, right? Okay, in the next video, we will see the hands-on exercise on how to create the VPC and all. Thank you.